Ryan was very laid back. He was just kind of a, go with the flow. Um, he was really witty, like really quick to come back with something really funny. He was just honestly a down to earth, just amazing, awesome, genuine person.
When I met him in SOI, we were both from Pennsylvania. Obviously, he's Pittsburgh. I was from the Hershey area, and just the way that he spoke of his friends, his family, from here, and just the love and the passion that he had for them, it immediately sparked my interest. I was like, look at this guy, fellow PA, just a stand-up guy.
He was a family man. He always, loved his friends. He always wanted to be around everybody. And just that guy you always want to be around when, things are the worst, just because he was so optimistic and he just brought a smile to everybody's face.
Well, Ryan, of course, was my fourth son. He was the youngest of all. And he was very dedicated as he grew up, even as a young child, to his friends and his family. And he enjoyed his friends. He was outside more than he was in. And we always knew where he was. He was always good that way. But he was a fun son.
Pretty contagious person, from the time you meet him, everything spawns from there.
He was my only child, and Ryan was very generous, loving, carefree. He just liked to have fun. Even little. He didn't have a worry in the world.
Ryan's passionate personality led him to the love of his life.
Probably 4 months before we graduated were when we became pretty close, as friends. And then he, of course, left for the Marines.
He was a very routine person, even before he joined, I can tell you, I never had to clean his room or change the bedclothes. Every day he made his bed. He was very structured that way. And I think he was looking for a life that continued that.
Ryan and I had just finished supper one evening, and he told me that he wanted me to go and meet his recruiter. And I said, "You're going to join the military?" And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I want to." So we went to the recruiting office. And at the recruiting office was Air Force, Army, Coast Guard, and so forth. The Marine Corps was at the end of the hall. I stopped and looked back, and I said, "You passed all these up just because you decided you want to go to the Marine Corps," which was fine, but I'm surprised, knowing Ryan, he didn't check everybody out first. And he said, "It's what I need, it's what I want."
He wanted to be a Marine for an entire career. He wasn't getting out until he retired. Just that was his life.
At the time, I thought it was a good move for him. Of course, as a mother, I was scared, worried, and all that. But first letter I got from him when he was in boot camp, first line was, "Dear Mom, I hope you're doing well. I hate this place, but I know I needed it."
On HBO, they had The Making of a Marine, and I taped it prior to him going. And I said, "I have something I want you to see." Once he saw it, his jaw kind of dropped, but he was good, and he breezed through Paris Island. So it's something he really wanted to do.
In Ryan's mind, I think he was going to be a Marine for 20 plus years. And I think he took his job very seriously. So he actually had a passion to want to know everything.
On July 22, 2002, Ryan began his career at Paris Island, South Carolina. He then was assigned to 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marines, in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii.
He was in the Marine Corps already for a couple of years. And the one Christmas he came home, and we just hung out more than usual. And then we just, kind of started talking, and we're like, well, maybe there's more than a friendship. But I was always kind of like, well, you're in Hawaii, I'm in Pittsburgh. Like, how will we ever make that work? And then come May, he said, well, I'm going to buy you a plane ticket. So you're going to come and visit me in Hawaii. After that, it moved really quick. he was actually training in Australia, so I went there and stayed with another wife, and he came home like 2 days before we got married, and we got married on August 1st.
Ryan went from one big step in life to another. His first deployment brought him to Soripad village in Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom.
His first ambush in Afghanistan, he explained to me, and actually the Army did a short article on him. He had been asleep, his turn to sleep on watch, and maybe they got under fire in an ambush. The enemy was on the opposite side of the mountain.
The Hodge won't fight us unless we give them a nice target to fight us with, you know? We had sent our vehicles in ahead of time, and then we had basically snuck up on a hill overwatching our vehicles at night, so they didn't know we were there. Nothing was happening, so we weren't really expecting much. We were trying to get them to fight us, but they wouldn't. So, most guys were pretty relaxed. Only had 2 people on fire watch, the rest of us racked out. And in the middle of the night, we hear one solitary gunshot.
What's that? Fire, fire, fire! Get!
They were firing over our position down onto the vehicles because they didn't know we were there. Someone on the vehicles must have got a little overzealous and not realized that we were there as well and fired over our heads. So we had rounds coming from our vehicles to them and from them to our vehicles right over us.
Alright, he fucking good. What the hell happened? Jump back to the dog. You good?
I'm good.
Get forward, get forward.
He had sent me a picture with nothing else on it. And when I got the picture, I couldn't figure what it was. His hand had pretty well been scuffed up. And I thought maybe he was in a brawl with somebody, and it looked like that's what could have occurred. So whenever I finally got a chance to talk to him on the phone, he said, "What do you think of my hand?" And I said, "Are you okay, and how did it occur?" He said, "It was shrapnel. It had come down by a rock in my weapon, and I continued to fight, and the sergeant yelled to me to get to the back and see the corpsman." And I said, "Well, what happened from there?" He said, "I put my hand between my legs and wiped the blood off of it. Went back up to the sergeant and said, 'All good here.' The sergeant says, 'Get back on the line,' and he continued to fight the battle."
Anything like that, you're actually considered for a Purple Heart. And, you know, Ryan was like, I don't deserve that. You know, I'm not completely wounded or anything. And so, you know, he told his doc, he's like, "Man, you gotta tell them that, you know, I just fell up a hill, and that's what happened."
Although Ryan's injury wasn't severe, it brought to reality the fact that he was put in harm's way on a daily basis.
The first deployment, I don't know if you want to call it being an inexperienced military family. I didn't worry so much. I mean, I worried. Believe me, every day, it's the first thing you think of when you wake up, and it's the last thing you think of before you go to bed. Yes, I worried, but not like I did the second deployment. The second deployment I knew was going to be different.
So, you know, when they're deployed, you try to stay as normal as possible just to keep yourself sane. You know, you try to just, okay, go about your work day, go about, you know, your other family life, and, you know, take care of friends and your military family, and you kind of just try to keep things as normal as possible. But it's just, they're on your mind 24/7.
When I found out he was going to be deployed the second time. I had flown down to Camp Lejeune to see him before he left. And he and Valerie had taken me to the airport. And I said my goodbyes to Valerie, and he and I were standing on the curb, and we just kept hugging each other, and I instantaneously got this really bad feeling. And I just started crying, and I just didn't want to let go. And the last thing he said to me before I walked into the airport is, "Mom, don't worry, I'll look both ways before I cross." But I cried all the way home. I got in my car at the airport. I called his dad. I just had a gut feeling that we weren't going to see him again.
Our first mission was to seize a place called Connaught Castle, which is, kind of crazy when you think your first mission is to seize a castle. And it was exactly what it sounds like. It was a castle. It was old and kind of falling apart, but it was a big mud-structured castle. So we had to take that back to be able to establish a location where we could operate from. So that was the first mission. After that, it became a lot of security patrols, in a sense that we had to go out into the villages and start getting a feel for the people. So we spent a lot of time going to villages and just interacting with the people. This is very remote deep southern Helmand. A lot of the people when we showed up thought we were Russians still. They had no idea that that was even over.
There are bad people that try to come and get into your village, and people that try to embed themselves in your homes. And I need to make sure that's not happening.
لأن إنه شنو بعض الناس المزينين قاعد يحاولون إنه يجون لهاي المنطقة يسيئوا لها فأنتوا راح تتضرروا.
We were new to the area, so you have all these different ways of collecting intelligence, and sometimes locals are telling you that this stuff's going on, or sometimes you're hearing ICOM radio chatter that this stuff's going on, or there's different ways of figuring stuff out. And there's so many reports coming in all the time. And what you also don't know is if a local says like, "Oh, hey, the Taliban are here, they're going to attack you tomorrow with 3,000 guys or something," you have to take into some consideration of, okay, people exaggerate or they don't know what they're talking about. Everybody thinks that on a deployment you're just like trying to go out and find and eliminate the bad guys all the time. And in reality, the time you spend with the local population is 1,000 to 1 compared to how much time you interact with the enemy. Ryan was the only guy around who'd been to Afghanistan. His deployment, back when he was with 3-3 was completely different because it was in a different part of the country. But at the same time, you take the knowledge where you can get it. So, we used him for a lot of knowledge on just general things with Afghanistan. It may be something to do with the language or the culture. It may have something to do with the way the Taliban fight versus the stereotypes of how Iraqi insurgents fight and things like that. Combat is a really adrenaline-causing event. It produces adrenaline like nothing else. So it's almost like you get excited. It was almost like exciting to the guys when somebody's shooting rockets because all of a sudden everything happens right away. Where now you're trying to figure out where it came from, who did it, what's going on, what's the next move, is something else going to happen? There's a lot of anticipation, excitement. Guys were doing what Marines are meant to do. They were going to combat. Everybody's excited.
Woo!
While Ryan was protecting his country abroad, Valerie kept him up to date on things at home.
I wrote him every day, every single day. Some days were 4 pages, some days were a paragraph. Just depending on the events that happened.
We were actually, taking care of some odd and end things. We were getting ready to step back out, and we heard an explosion outside. We were inside of a mud-walled compound, so it was tough to tell, what was that? Obviously we knew it was something went bang, but we didn't know, whether it's incoming or outgoing or 107s or mortars. Did somebody just hit, did they just shoot an RPG? We couldn't tell what it was because the sound was distorted. And somebody yelled over to us that it was outgoing because mortars make a pretty loud boom when you shoot them from your position as well. And I just remember Gunny and I looked at each other and was like, that wasn't outgoing. I could hear the crump. It landed. As we were talking about this, a few seconds later, a round landed very close to us on the east wall. And really what they were doing is they were bracketing. He'd hit the west wall with a mortar, they hit the east wall with a mortar, and then they very rapidly dropped 3 rounds in the middle of the castle.
They're giving out the order right now. It's gonna be a bad day for them. Okay. Have fun with that. Be on the rest.
When we heard the round hit the east wall, kind of unspoken, just looking in each other's eyes, Gunny and I knew, like, hey, we better get over to the west side. When we got ready to take off, one of the rounds that landed just in front of us, we were waiting, kind of pick our time when we wanted to get over there, and somebody yelled that, hey, some guys are hit over there towards the center west side. And while Gunny and I were taking off that way, so the unwritten rule kind of amongst platoon commander, platoon sergeant is the platoon commander always handles the fight. That was my job. If there's a fight kicking off right now, I've got to take care of the fight. The platoon sergeant takes care of casualties, or kind of coordinates the logistics if he needs to. Our staff sergeant that was there told us, hey, Lane's hit and 2 guys are wounded over there. So when we heard Ryan was down and 2 more guys were hit, it doesn't really sink in. It's not like you're sitting there going, is this serious? Oh my God, I wonder what happened, or this or that, because you could tell things were getting ready to accelerate very quickly. They were kind of doing their what we call fire for effect with their mortars. I mean, they were dropping them in. Well, usually when somebody drops mortars, 2 things. They're either just going to throw them at you, trying to cause casualties, or they're shooting mortars at you to put your heads down so they can maneuver on you. It's a suppression. So Gunny went to go take care of, or figure out what was going on with Ryan, because, we knew he was hit, and we knew it wasn't good just by the reaction, the look I saw on the staff sergeant's face. I ran kind of around the other side of this mud-in area on the inside of the compound to get to the west side, because I could see guys starting to mount the wall. Now I'm hearing machine gun fire. Things are starting to kick off. I ran over to the west wall. I got up to the west wall. The mortars had kind of ceased at this point, but you could kind of see multiple guys coming out of the tree line. There was guys pretty much due west of us to the southwest. Everybody's exchanging fire. Things are picking up very, very quickly, and things are getting very loud. There's multiple machine guns up on the wall. There's Mark 19 grenade launchers up there. Guys are shooting their personal weapons. You've got incoming machine gun fire coming in. So I basically talked to a couple of my team leaders, who were kind of the guys directly in the chain of command underneath Ryan. Out of his 12 guys he was in charge of, there was 3 other team leaders who each had 4 guys they were in charge of. So I got to them, kind of gave them some direction on making sure everybody was set up, what sectors of fire they had, where they needed their coverage, making sure they properly assigned their saw gunners, and it kind of clicked on me like, okay, I need to find out what's going on with Ryan, because depending on the situation with casualties or how many guys are down, what assets we're going to need to get them where, if we're going to, all these things are happening very quickly that you have to analyze too. So it was kind of like, okay, do we need to finish this fight very, very quickly so I can get, dust off in here, medevac birds, how many guys do I need to get on them, what kind of birds does it need to be, who do I need to call, like all these things are happening. So I jumped off the wall, and which was a process because this is like a 20-foot wall. So when I say jump, kind of slid down a wall, whatever. I got my way down, but it took me a minute. While they were loading up the vehicles, the fight had kind of died down, so I ran back over, wanted to talk to Gunny. He told me, like, it's not good, it doesn't look good. And Ryan had taken some fragmentation in his side, so both lungs were punctured. Well, they were able to get that patched up and get him breathing again. His lungs were, they were inflating, they were working right again. But he said, I'm pretty sure when we just put him in the back of the vehicle, he told me I saw his chest move. He's like, he's breathing again. And that was our biggest concern, because he wasn't breathing. He told me, he's breathing again. I think he's going to be all right. And we got him on the bird. Give me just a second. All right, so Gunny told me, hey, I saw his shirt moving. And kind of the unwritten rule was, if you can get them on that bird and they're breathing and they're alive, you know, those birds are magic. You're going to get him somewhere where they can do some pretty amazing medical stuff very, very quickly. And so we got him on the bird and got him out of there. And, you know, it was like a roller coaster ride because all the Marines knew who was hit. And, you know, I was talking before about how much they looked up to Reiner, kind of what he meant to them. And I think I had an appreciation for what he meant to that platoon. I mean, it didn't matter who the platoon commander was or who a platoon sergeant is. You knew who the heart and soul was. I was talking to one of my other sergeants who, if Ryan wasn't there, really, this guy just became, you know, my new extension to the Marines. I mean, and that's what we were talking about. I'm like, look, man, hey, it's your time to shine. You know, like, you're my senior guy right now. You know, I'm going to need you right now. And we're kind of talking about what I would, you know, starting to task him out. Like, hey, I need this with the vehicles. I need this ready to go. Like, we very well could be, you know, getting tasked out in less than the next 20 to 30 minutes to go back after these guys. Like, we got to have everything ready. So it's kind of working out the direction pieces to those with him. And I saw our first sergeant walk over to Gunny, and I saw him start talking. And I kind of looked at him because it was like, I wonder what they're talking about right now. Because I could just, you get a feeling. It comes over, you know something's not right. And it's like a sixth sense piece. I mean, you just know. And I turned over my right shoulder, and our company commander was coming out of the COC there. And he said, "Did you hear?" I said, "Hear what?" And he said, "Ryan passed in flight."
So I get home that night and I'm laying in bed and, you know, I wrote him really quick. It was actually probably only about a paragraph, you know, just letting him know that I was home. I had just gotten home and I was safe. And in the middle of the night, I kind of was like in and out of sleep, you know, and I wasn't feeling right. You know, I just didn't feel like I just felt like something wasn't right. I kind of woke up in the middle of the night and I sat up and I just felt him around me. You know, I just felt him really close to me. And I even actually said out loud, I was like, "Ryan?" So I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I must have been having a dream about him or like, I don't know, but I just like really felt his presence near me.
Yeah, the roller coaster took off again, but this time it did a nosedive. And that's a tough thing to tell the guys because the only people that knew when I had looked over at First Sergeant, he was telling Gunny, and the company commander just told me. One other sergeant was standing there and heard the initial news. You know, now Gunny and I kind of had to collect ourselves and figure out how we were going to go tell these guys that, you know, this guy who they all looked up to just passed. You know, wasn't coming back. And that's a hard piece to do. But, you know, at the same time, it's part of the job.
News of Ryan's death traveled quickly.
I did detective for Allegheny County District Attorney's Office, of which we have an office in Dormont Borough. And we're on the second floor. And I noticed that Marines were coming up to the second floor with the Dormont police. They asked if there was somewhere we could talk. And again, I didn't think much of it. We went in and they closed the door, and I knew then something was serious, but it hadn't really hit about Ryan at that point. They said, "Sir, your son Ryan, Sergeant Ryan H. Lane, died in combat at 10 o'clock this morning in artillery fire." It was like an out-of-body experience because you almost think that you just hung up talking to the person, and I just looked at them and I didn't say much more, and they said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes." And I just said, "I knew it." And they looked at me funny, and I said, "I knew if it ever happened, it would be something out of his control."
I was coming home for a friend of mine's wedding, and it just so happened that I was driving up to Pittsburgh the day before, so I came home, and I was only going to be home for that week for her wedding. And it was the following day after I got home, I was heading out to my friend's, Amber's house, who was one of the bridesmaids with me. We were going to work on some of the things for the wedding, and my phone rings with an odd number, and I answered it because I actually thought that it was Ryan. It was an 808 area code, which is a Hawaii area code, but a lot of times their satellite phones bounce off of an 808 area code. So I was actually like really excited. I'm like, oh, okay, I wasn't expecting a phone call. You know, so I answered it, and it was a gentleman who said, pretty much the only thing I remember him saying is that he had important information regarding my husband. And I actually thought it was a joke at first. He just said, "No, ma'am, I have really important information regarding your husband that I can't speak with you over the phone about. I need to know your whereabouts. I need to know a physical place that you are at right now." And I think that's when it became real. I think I pulled over. I didn't know what to think. I kind of knew in my heart that he was gone, but you don't want to believe that. So I sat and waited. Just waited, knowing that there's probably going to be 2 Marines coming, knocking on my door, and just kind of sat there. I didn't cry. I was shaking. My hands were shaking, and I guess you don't know how to process that. And you don't want to believe it, so you have that little bit of hope. You're thinking, okay, well, I'm gonna try not to get upset. I'm gonna try not to, I'm just not gonna think about it. Like, I'm gonna wait and see.
As we arrived at her mother's house, Valerie knew that the Marines were looking for her somehow. She was standing in the middle of the street. Well, at that point, she came out and she was crying and she said, "How bad is he?" And you can just imagine how hard it is to explain that.
I had had back surgery, and as soon as they brought me back from the recovery room and got me into my room, the Marines came into my room. And I just said no. I just didn't want to believe it. I just said no. And it was just the most god-awful feeling.
From that point, we kind of coordinated our efforts and gathered our thoughts. Came back to my house. First Sergeant Connor was in charge of the funeral preparations, and he met us here. From that point, he notified us that we had to go to Dover Air Force Base to receive Ryan coming home.
My parents always said that in your life you will meet a lot of people, but there will be that one that will stick with you always. That was Ryan.
I honestly think that God brought Ryan into my life so that I could be a better man. When I met Ryan, he changed the way I viewed life, and I miss him more and more every day.
I don't think anyone could ever forget him. Not a day goes by that I don't think about him. Semper Fi.
I love you as a son and miss you as I lost a son that day. May God wrap you in his arms and you guard the streets in heaven. When the time is due, we will all reunite as outlaws in the sky.
United States of America. To all of whom shall see these present greetings. Is certified, President of the United States of America, with awarded the Purple Heart, established by General George Washington at Newburgh, New York, August 7, 1782. To Sergeant Ryan H. Lay, United States Marine Corps, for wounds received in action on 23 July 2009 in Afghanistan, resulting in his death. Given under my hand, the City of Washington, this 24th day of July 2009. Signed, S.P. Gillen, Lieutenant General, Commanding.
I can honestly say that I had the time of my life with Ryan. In high, in sight, he taught me how to live my life to the fullest, to appreciate everything, and make the best of every situation. Ryan, you can hang up your boots, you can put down your gun. Your mission is complete. On behalf of a grateful nation, I say thank you from the bottom of my heart. I miss you every day, and I love you. At the end of the day, when it's my turn to go, if I can look at myself in the mirror and be half the man Ryan was, I will consider it to be a success and be able to rest easy knowing I gave it my all.
Let's look at Pooh's battle scars. Poor Pooh. Oh, look at that. He's like a wounded fawn.
Dumbass white boy.
Dumbass white boy with white forehead.
Well, the thing that I always think of Ryan as being a very well-respected person. I think of him as a hero, but I think of him as a great brother.
It is with humility and deep respect tonight that we honor Sergeant Ryan H. Lane posthumously with the 2011 Chairman's Award. Please welcome to the stage Ryan's mother, Ms. Kathy Hanley, and his father, Mr. Harold Lane.
Thank you for your honor and recognition of our son, Ryan H. Lane, who was a Sergeant United States Marine Corps. Our thanks come from Ryan's parents, entire family, and friends. After training prior to leaving for Afghanistan, Ryan's unit won the Secretary of Defense Challenge Coin. He became a true leader and knew how to gain the trust and loyalty of his unit. He wanted to be up front first and involved in whatever danger came along to protect or educate his Marines. Ryan's gunny would say, he always knew what I was going to say, and he always had it done. One of his new lieutenants said that Ryan introduced him to how the unit operated in Afghanistan and actually helped him to survive. Ryan's awards are the Purple Heart, Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal with a V, Good Conduct Medal with a star, National Defense Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal with a star, Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, NATO ISAF Medal, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy Unit Commendation Navy Sea Service Deployment Ribbon with 2 stars. I mentioned those because Valerie said he would be at his computer every night to make sure that everything was all in line as to his training and his awards. The loss of Ryan has placed a void in our hearts. Bad news comes in unexpected ways. Kathy Ryan's mother was notified while she was in the hospital. Valerie was notified while visiting her mother preparing for a friend's wedding in the middle of the street. My wife Dawn and Kathy's husband Jim by telephone, and me at work by Marines. I think I give this from our family. Enjoy each moment you have with the ones around you. We are, until we too pass away, haunted by the fatal numbers because they are our friends, mothers, fathers, husbands, wives, sons, and daughters. There are no noble wars. America has noble warriors.
You know, he was my brother, he was my friend. A lot of people will definitely remember him as being both, you know, their friend and consider him their brother. They'd do anything for him, he'd do anything for them. And that's just the way he was, that's the way we are, that's the way his friends are, and I just think that's the way he was, and that's how we'll remember him.
Lieutenant Hanson. Present. Sergeant Melito. Present. Sergeant Campbell. Present. Sergeant Canty. Present. Sergeant Lane. Sergeant Ryan Lane. Sergeant Ryan H. Lane. Present.
He was always just such a genuine, kind-hearted, would do anything for anybody man, and I mean, you know, have his parents to thank for that. I'm so thankful, you know, of the man that they raised, of the man that he was to me. You know, he was such an amazing friend, best friend, husband. I mean, he, you know, he was just always there for everybody, and yeah, he's our hero.
He'll never be forgotten. He's a hero not just to the people in our family, but the people in the community and the friends that he grew up with and that knew him, and he's just loved. He's known as a hero, and I know my kids, they just remember their uncle as the hero that he was, and he'll always be remembered for that.
I knew Ryan as a Marine the whole time. I knew him, you know. I never met him before the Marine Corps, and never met him after the Marine Corps, so he was a Marine the entire time I met him. He was an amazing, amazing friend, and I wish he was here.
Take care of yourself, all right? I love you.